How do you follow that? Your expectations are right up here, and all you're doing is looking at that board and thinking, she's a professor, she's an academic, this is the last session of a long day, and Nicola's just said all of that. Hopefully I'm going to be able to live up to that. If I do, I do. If I don't, I apologise now, and you probably wish you'd got the earlier train, but let's see how I can do. Before I start, is there anybody out there from Loughborough? Good, right, okay. Just keep it to yourself, all right, whatever I say. Well, you will know that a huge part of my job at the moment is actually practising what I preach, which is I'm Associate Dean of Teaching. We're about to... Oh, that's very dangerous. Let's not step down that. It's a rabbit hole. Look, I'm going to go down. That was great, Adrian. Thank you very much indeed. You set me up for one right at the very start. A huge part of my role is about launching a new campus for Loughborough University down in London, a postgraduate campus, which I'm not going to talk about at all in this talk, but I'm just going to say that that's a huge part of my job, and I'm actually practicing a lot of what I'm preaching here. So, I was at a hospital. Oh, before I start my hospital story, how many of you, anybody out here heard me before, apart from 1, 2, 3, 4? You can have to, is this the 4th time, 5th time? You lost count. But you would know I was at this hospital. And when I was standing in this hospital, I noticed that people were coming in and they were signing a book. And I said, what book are they signing? And they said, we're signing the bicycle book. I said, the bicycle book, what does that mean? And they said, we come into work on a bike and we sign the book. And I said, well, what does it do? Where does it get? Don't know. I come into work on a bike and I sign the book. And I said, well, what happens to the information? 21st century, you know, does it mean you get extra pay for being environmentally friendly and all this stuff? I come into work on a bike and I sign the bicycle book. So I said, okay, do you mind if I just find out where this bicycle book goes? Feel free. And I was in there looking at what is called a productive system, a lean system inside a hospital. So I was sort of followed this book, and I found out it went to personnel. So I went into personnel and I said, do you get the bicycle book? Yes, they said, we get the bicycle book. I said, and what do you do with it? Do you take down the name, the job number? Do they give a little bit, get a bit of extra? No. So what do you do with it? Well, we found about 6 of them fit really nicely on the shelf there. And when we get 6 of them, we pop them into a photocopying paper box. And then we take it down to stores. And I said, how many of these boxes of bicycle books have you got in the stores? I don't know. I said, well, do you mind if I come back and you have a look? Yeah, that's fine, that's fine. A couple of days later, I go in. They're really not as excited to see me this time round. And I said, did you find out how many bicycle books you had? And they said, yes. How many did they have? How many years' worth of bicycle books did they have? Come on, you spoke to Adrian, you can speak to me. 30. No, close, not quite. Not quite. When was the NHS formed? Well, between 48 was one of the first ones. What was happening around that time? End of the 40s, early 50s? What had happened? End of the... If you came into work on a bike, what happened? You got extra rations because you weren't using fuel. And they were still signing the bicycle book today. True story. So if you take nothing else away from this last session, part of your role, in the roles that you do, and within your departments and the areas you work, you just write down on your piece of paper, your iPad, whatever you've got, where is the bicycle book? Because it's very, very powerful story. You will have bicycle books in your organisation, in your department, and with the people that you go out to support and work with. How many of your institutes are doing lean, by the way, or equivalent of lean? How many of them? Yep. How many of you have heard of lean and those sorts of approaches? Now keep your hand up. I want you just to keep your hand up for a second, because I want you to take this in, look around you. I asked that same question at UHR, which is University's HR, 3 weeks ago. Guess how many people put their hand up when I asked them how many people had heard of lean? Oh yeah, exactly. Not far off. let's just say surprised. I'm going to use that word. So there's HR with about a dozen of them, about 250 of them in the room, and I'm pleased to say I think nearly everyone, bar one or two, including myself, didn't put their hand up when I asked the question then. That gives you a bit of a cultural difference, which I think is really important. So stories like that, the bicycle book, are really powerful when you're trying to say to them, why are we still doing bicycle books? There's loads of them. I did a piece of work with Coventry Building Society, and they were saying every Friday we run around getting information and data to produce reports to put into a red box. I've got no idea where this red box goes, but I'm not going to do it this Friday. I've never heard from that guy since then, so I don't know what's happened to him in his job, but I'm sure he's not putting the files in the red box anymore. Those tokens we have at Loughborough, we have a building where to get coffee, we have to get tokens from the front desk in Hazelrig. You know where I'm talking. They were spending hours noting down how many tokens each department had, and they were never, ever asking them for the money back for the tokens. So now it's all on free vend. You've got that's a tiny example to a huge example. You've got lots of examples of bicycle books. And what I want to do with you in the sort of 20, 25 minutes I'm with you is to get you thinking about how you challenge yourself and your colleagues to start thinking about the bicycle books. And why do I want you to get to do this? To do lean? No, absolutely not. I do not want you to do this to do lean in itself. I brought a paper out around about 2 years ago titled, Is Lean a Failed Theory for Public Services? The Lean Queen wrote a paper entitled, Is Lean a Failed Theory for Public Services? It didn't go down very well, or it did go down extremely well with some people. Because my challenge is, lean in itself, business improvement in itself, will not deliver what we need for 21st century higher education. What we need is a change of mindset and paradigm, and that is recognising that we are a service-based organisation. We are service-based within our universities, and we are service-based externally now as well. I'd love to say we are still public services, and the culture is still there, and I will hold on that till my dying day, that we should be a public sector organisation. But whether we are or we aren't, we are still a public service organisation. And a lot of what I talk about now is bringing the word service back into public services. By the way, this is my tweet, or Twitter, or whatever you call it. I was advised to do one. So if I say anything vaguely interesting, please feel free to tweet it. I've done, as Nicola outlined, I've looked at a huge amount of lean right across public services. I was very fortunate to get a research fellowship which allowed me to look at the implementation of lean across various public services. And many of you will know, coming from an IT program, project management, business analysis background, you've done huge amounts in lean, business process re-engineering, business process analysis, etc., etc. And my challenge was, in the work that I did, was to look at how you could roll out lean across public services. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those findings in a second. But my latest papers talked about the fact, actually, you could do fried bananas, to be honest. You could do anything. You could do very basic operations and process analysis, because the fundamental design of the systems, and this is where it made me smile when only 12 people in HR put their hand up when they said, have you ever heard of lean? Because I think HR is one of those common processes across higher education where some of the duplication and non-value-add activity is, let's just say, mind-boggling. Yeah? When we do those lovely swim lanes and we're thinking, where is this going? And who's signing it off, and why are they signing it off? We've got lots of smiles around the room. You've obviously tried to do some of this. But it's just solely poorly designed in the first place. It's not even low-hanging fruit. It's rotten apples on the ground. You get a few of them together, you get somebody from central HR, from an academic department, and they say the ops manager or the support manager, and you start talking through signing off for a new academic or support member of staff, and people's eyes are opening up. Do you really do all of that? And why are you filling in all those forms? Because we fill in these forms over there. And, you know, the system is so poorly designed in the first place. And that's challenging those bicycle books. So actually call it lean, fried banana, systems thinking, business process re-engineering. Call it what you like. What was important was it gives us a hook to start talking about process improvement, to start talking about service delivery. I've written a number of reports around higher education. I did a piece for Association of Business Schools. I also did another piece for the Southern Universities Management Services, SUMS. They're accessible public reports looking at the development of lean across HE. This is, 5 years old, but I would say a lot of this still stands. That really is still very early days in terms of developing lean and associated techniques across HE. I think if some of the universities in here, you'd have little pockets of activity that goes on. In Loughborough, we've taken a slightly different approach with a change project, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But really, what we've got here, there's always funny stories. When I was at Warwick University, anybody from Warwick here? Always a few from Warwick. So when I was at Warwick, the business school, as it was at the time in the Central, I've got a slide from Warwick in a second actually, talked about how do we do lean across the university. And they thought, who's the experts in lean in public services and HE? And they Googled it and they found out it was me that was sitting literally three offices down from the person that had been asked to launch a lean project. So that was good, that was good. So they knew where to find me. So in terms of it's still early days, it's very much back office, lots to do with student registration, student recruitment, student admissions. Would that all sound about right, where a lot of the lean projects are happening? Very much in certain parts of the university. This is the Warwick one. I'd love to know if this is still true. I hope it is. Whereas they did a piece of work looking at postgraduate admissions, and they basically fundamentally changed it. So the number, I'm looking at the Warwick people who are trying not to react to me by looking at this, thinking if these still hold. But I love this one. Going from 7,000 emails down to 200 emails. From creation of a student record from 6% to 99%. Yes, there's IT solutions in here, but a lot of it was about fundamentally changing the way that they viewed the process and system they were part of. So get some really good results. Reducing delays, reducing numbers of steps, centralising admissions, new services for students. You know, a lot of students going from getting emails to getting texts to alerting them to certain things, passwords. Really interesting story about, arriving at student registration. One Vice-Chancellor of a university said wanted 0 queues. Absolute 0 queues. Didn't want queuing at all when you're doing your finance, your halls, your department, all the rest of it. Wanted 0 queues. And the Students' Union put their hand up in the piece of work that I was doing an analysis of it. It said, whoa, we don't want 0 queues on registration day. Why don't students want 0 queues? What happens in queues? They meet people. Yeah, they like it. What they don't want is be queuing for 45 minutes, an hour. So it's about understanding those requirements is really important. So in the work that I do, I talk about the power of 3. I talk about 3 principles, 3 tools and 3 stages. You will get a set of these slides afterwards. The 3 principles from all of the research work I've done, which has been fairly significant, as hopefully I've showed, is the 3 principles that hold around lean and associated techniques, I'm going to stop saying that bit, in public services are value, flow and reduction of waste. Value, understanding value from the eyes of the user. Flow, understanding the flow and the reduction of waste. Getting rid of those non-value added steps, the failure demand in our system. The demand we create for not doing it right the first time. When I go into organisations, though these are the principles that hold, what do I see in terms of lean projects? I see reduction of waste, reduction of waste, reduction of waste, reduction of waste, a little thought about flow and an afterthought about value. In other words, we focus on rearranging our deck chairs on the Titanic. Yeah? That we go in with really good ideas, particularly people in this room who think about processes, who are probably sad people like me that are constantly looking at flow in terms of different systems around them. My children can no longer go to theme parks without thinking about queuing systems. It's very, very sad. So, and in that sense, that we focus a lot, we go with these ideas thinking, how do we improve this process all the way through this systems approach? Yet we often get reduced to just doing reduction of waste, changing the process in small pieces, which can have an effect. Small steps of incremental improvement are a huge part of what lean and continuous improvement culture is about. But what we need to recognise is just doing the reduction of waste, taking out the non-value added steps, sometimes is not enough. We've got to go further than that. We've got to challenge those systems and processes more effectively. And my one that I focus on a lot is flow. Triage. We love to triage. Does anybody know where triage comes from? She says with a very dodgy accent to try and give you a hint. France. Any particular time in France? Any time, when, where? Yes. And who led? Who was the leader? Not French Revolution, sorry, no, wrong time. Got confused. Napoleonic, that's what I'm thinking, which is when. Napoleon, nice man was he not? Not. Yeah? So Napoleon has a medical team, and he says to his medical team, when my soldiers come off the battlefield, you assess them as one of 3 stages. No chance of medical input, no chance of survival with medical input, sorry about that, some chance of survival with medical input, definite chance of survival with medical input. And being the lovely man that I am, the ones I want you to work on first are no chance, some chance, or definite chance. Why? Get them back out onto the battlefield. Absolutely. Within 100 years, a lovely lady comes along who does a lot for the nursing and the health and, well, the environment, but she's still in a medical tent in a war-torn field. But when the soldiers come into Florence Nightingale, she basically decides, does she work on no chance, some chance, or definite chances first? Some. What happens to the definite chances while they're waiting in that war-torn, muddy medical tent, even with their lovely new facilities? No, not quite that bad. But they deteriorate. Well, some of them could do, but they deteriorate. And that notion of what some of you would recognise as runners, repeaters and strangers, your runners being definite chance, your repeaters being some chance, and your strangers, your highly complex situations being no chances, that notion of triage has stuck with us ever since. And actually, the Florence Nightingale notion of triage has happened ever since. That we end up dealing with the slightly more complex, bit more interesting cases, you know, and thinking the simpler stuff can wait. But as the simpler stuff waits, it starts to add complexity into the system. And whereas a lot of manufacturing organisations have actually ended up looking at how do we set up systems to look after runners, repeaters and strangers across public services, and including HE, we have a tendency to try and create a one-size-fits-all. And I've done a lot of work with housing associations on repairs, on housing repairs. And it's very interesting because housing repairs and requests would come into a system in our housing associations, and essentially they would use a first pick order. They are not streaming them to recognise we need this resource to work on the high volume, low variety, the runners, the definite chances with this team who can be much less professional or have much less skill base than the ones over here that are putting in a brand new central heating system or a brand new roofing system in a house over here, which is much more complex, which is your stranger. We end up trying to push everything through the same system. So what we end up doing is creating workarounds. We end up creating workarounds and we end up creating complexity in our system. So one of the approaches I talk about a lot through the work I do is starting to think about how we can stream different pieces of work as it comes into our system. We start to challenge and think about what are runners and repeaters and strangers. And we do that by people in IT here, help desks. Part of their role is to do that streaming and to think about how we triage. But triage shouldn't be about letting the definites wait. It's about getting them in and out of the system as quickly as possible. So as mad as Napoleon was, he actually had a really good point. Get them in and out of the system as quickly as possible. And if you want to think about a closer to home example, think about A&E when you go into A&E. We actually want minor injuries to get in and out of the system, yet we get them to wait approximately 3 hours, 58 minutes and 59 seconds to hit our targets. Well, we should get them in and out as quickly as possible. I want to just talk one more thing about flow, and I'm aware I've got a lot of slides to still get through. Another thing about flow, which is really important around this and the work I've done, is what I call customization from a standard offering. We have a real obsession, and I apologise for some in the room that probably talk about this, standardisation. Let's do standardisation. Let's do standards and standardisation. Well, I can tell you now, in public services and in service-based environments, standardisation is near on impossible. Because actually people want to feel they're having customisation. And this is something that I'm taking on board very clearly in the programme development that I'm doing down in London. And what we've got there, customisation from a standard offering, is basically what we're talking about is the fact that you can create a standard process but still customise the output. And a really good example for this is a Subway sandwich shop. Who's going to admit they've been into a Subway sandwich shop? So, the lady there with the red butterflies, it looks like. So, in terms of when you go to a Subway sandwich shop, what happens when you first go in? What do they ask you? What bread do you want? If I said I would like gluten-free seeded bread, could they give that to me? Not. No. Because how many options do you get? 5 or 6. There's a lady that does go in. 5 or 6 I've counted. 5 or 6. You can have them in different lengths. Now, then what do they ask you?
Well, meat.
Yeah, what meat, what filling. How many choices do you get of those?
I don't know, vegetarian.
Ah. But what do people think of those fillings, people that have been in? How many main fillings? No, between about 8 and 12. I've done too much research on this. But it's not a huge amount. And then they put your fiddly bits in and they ask if you want it to be toasted. Did you come out with what you perceive? Those people that go into them, do you come out what is perceived to be your customised sandwich within that range of offerings they've given you? Yes. Yet were you offered every single filling possible? Were you offered every single type of bread possible? No. Would you be offered the same breads in Newcastle as you would be in Birmingham as you would be in London? Maybe, but 1 or 2 might be different because they'll look at the demographics. We as professionals know the range of options that is probably viable for that particular solution. So rather than saying, tell me what you want, what we should be doing is advising people through a range of options so they feel customised. And I can really think about this, doing the project I'm doing at the moment or launching a new site, which is not a business school campus, it's a cross-disciplinary, media, design, sports, of course, business and electrical or digital, is the fact that it's the sense that each of those academics in those disciplines feel like they have some notion of customisation in the offering they've got of their programmes. Yet it's actually standardised. All modules are 15 credits. All of the students would do 8 credits. All of the students would do a big group project. All of the students would do an individual dissertation. Yet they feel like they've got a notion of customisation. So it's actually thinking about how can we give customisation with a standard offering? How can we manage flow more effectively by thinking about getting them to perceive? So when you're working with your various different schools and departments across your university, it's giving them the perception they're getting something a bit different from the business school, from the engineering school, from the Department of Geography. Because think about academics, that's what they want to feel, isn't it? They want to feel special. And I can say that, standing here as an academic. 3 types of tools. So that's 2 lessons about flow, customisation with standard offering and where triage really came from. 3 types of tools, assessment, monitoring and improvement. Assessment is basically process flow charts. Put your hand up if you do process flow charts. I expect every single person around to do a process flow chart. Leave your hand up in your building, your department, whatever, if you've got a monitoring board, a board that shows how many current projects are currently underway, what statuses they're at, who's working on them, what the timeline is, what the issues are with them, all of that stuff. Leave your hand up if you have regular meetings around those boards talking about how you can manage those projects far more effectively. Ooh, the numbers have gone right down. But we still have a good number. I'm glad you're still doing it. So Sheffield there doing a lot of work. So you've got probably about 20 of you. Brilliant. That is the important piece. thinking about how do we keep improving what we're doing is important. So process flow charts, really important. This is a very exciting one. This is capital gains tax for revenue and customs. So this is capital gains tax policy development. And actually, the policy of capital gains tax has to be reviewed every 12 months. Guess how long the top process used to take? 18 months, absolutely. Now it takes about 6 weeks. Visual management has to be one of the most powerful approaches that's come out of this whole area. Visual management. Using visual management and whiteboards as a means to communicate what we're trying to do. And a very quick story with this one. When I was at Cardiff, anybody here from Cardiff? Getting all my universities out here. So when I was at Cardiff in the business school was known to be one of the worst ones to get exam papers in on time without any errors. And so my quality and assessment director came to me and said, when I was Associate Dean of Teaching of Cardiff Business School, you need to start writing the emails now. I said, what are you talking about? Start writing the emails now because we need to get these exam papers in on time. I said, I'm doing no such thing. I bought a whiteboard, I wrote down accounting, I wrote down economics, I wrote down operations management, marketing, operational behaviour. I wrote down how many undergraduate papers were due, how many postgraduate papers were due. When the deadline was for registry, I put it on a whiteboard in the exam room and I told all the discipline heads. I said, if you want to know how many exam papers you are behind and what percentage you've currently got in on target, go to the whiteboard in the exam room. And they did. And someone told me afterwards that within 24 hours of me saying that, the head of economics has sent an email round saying, we are on 9%. We are the economics department. We have to come first. Get your papers in now. Seriously, I actually have got this email. That was no email I wrote. That was nothing I did. That was a whiteboard in the exams office. Very, very powerful. Visual management, very powerful approach in this area. Oh, and I love this one. I saw this at the School of Business and Economics in Stockholm. It's absolutely serious. So they have all the academics down here on the left-hand side showing how many papers. I showed this at a Dean's conference. Oh, dear, that was a dangerous thing to do. But all the academics and where they're going. Now, they use it to support each other. You're obviously having a real problem with that paper. It seems to be stuck in the process. Is there anything we can do? But, you know, your 4x4 for your ref. Oh. Wonderful. I'm surprised Warwick hasn't got this already, actually. So, and improvements, 5S. How many of you know about 5S? Well, in a nutshell, in 30 seconds, 5S is essentially the difference between your kitchen and, unless you're a very sad IKEA person, and I apologise if you are, your shed and your garage. So what does your shed and garage look like? Awful, all over the place. But your kitchen is all nice and orderly, isn't it? You've got your cutlery tray and your ergonomic triangle, and hopefully it's fairly clean. So it's about everything sorted. You've got an order to it. It's kept clean and tidy. You know where things are, and you sustain it. Well, unless you've got teenage kids like I do, you attempt to sustain it. But the point being is that's what 5S is about. And it's about having that discipline and improving what you do all of the time. So I'm going to very, very quickly talk about the model we're doing at Loughborough because I'm really, really like the model we've done here called the Change Project Team. So we actually have a Change Project Team. And what we've got that's really important is we have a project management board. And sitting on that project management board are the Chief Finance Officer, the Chief Operating Officer, the Director of Finance, Director of HR, Director of IT, and me. And so therefore, it's a really senior team that looks at all the change projects across the university. We have major change projects, and we also have continuous improvement type projects. And we've built up a methodology which has been built on a combination of my research and some work others have done to go through a process of actually changing many, many processes at Loughborough. The IT board also is linked to the change board as well. And another really important aspect that we have is we have secondments. So we have people coming out from professional services and academic departments to spend time in the change team in order to actually roll out the ideas across the university. So we have a process. I'm not going to go into this in detail. You can get it on the website. It's essentially based on Plan, Do, Check, Act, of rolling out a system of change projects across the university. And we have got different projects like this. Make Me a Student. Brought-in teachers has been a really important one. Really, really quite an incredible process. I've just looked at how we can manage the assessment process down in the London campus, because we're not on the main campus. Very, very complex process which we've tried to simplify. So we have a combination of major projects, smaller projects, secondments, senior people on a change team, linked to the IT board as well, project board. So we're trying to take a really holistic view around change management. And that's the process before for university teachers, brought-in teachers, really good fun. If you were coming in to work for 6 months as a brought-in teacher, you're lucky if you got paid within 9 months of leaving. And then go into this one. You can all think of examples like this. But here's some really good examples. So dates to claim going from sort of 6 to 12 days down to 2.5 days. So really making a difference in terms of some of the process change. You've all got lots of examples of this. But what are the challenges? I've got 5 minutes to talk about the challenges. I might go 2 or 3 minutes over, I apologise. But what are some of the challenges? There's an over-reliance on lean workshops, on process improvement workshops. There's an overall focus on the tools, and there's a lack of understanding of the service user. And as I've said, lean and associated techniques have been used as a catalyst in order to think about how we can change systems. But my challenge is, and my challenge to you, is to say it was so poorly designed in the first place you could use a whole host of things. But let's use this terminology, or whatever terminology suits, to be a catalyst to think about service change. And we don't want to just focus on the tools alone, the workshops, the 5S, the process mapping. Because if we focus on the tools and tools alone, then what will happen is we get consultants coming saying, just buy these tools, you'll get real results. Yeah, you will, because the process was so poorly designed in the first place. Yeah? And actually, because we're desperate to get into universities, we won't charge you £2,500, we'll charge you £80. But if you focus on the tools and the tools alone, this is what can happen. And you know that. You've seen that. When you do a new IT system, you get that huge upsurge in improvement. But then it's about sustaining that that's really, really important. Because it's an expedition. Anything to do with lean and these types of ideas is an expedition. It's about, you hear organisations, and HE being something, let's do lean. Let's get a team established. Let's do some training. We've got a base camp, so let's do some training. Let's get some pilot projects and rapid improvement projects. Let's do all these great tools and techniques. But I would say we've got to be careful we don't just go up and down those slower slopes. That actually we challenge people differently and we say, let's think about those runners, repeaters and strangers, the different ways we understand demand. Let's think about where is the real value in our processes. Let's link it to our strategy. Let's reward the lean leaders, not those people that caused the problems in the first place. They then resolve them and then we promote them. We know those sorts of people. Let's get the right metrics. Let's get the right problem solving. Let's communicate. I'm now hearing around Loughborough, people talk about process, flow, and they talk about failure demand. Brilliant. We're getting that language in our behaviours across the university. And let's make sure that we get real value through the chain. I created a house of lean for public services. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but essentially I'm saying that if you focus on the tools, and the tools are the pillars, underpinned by training and developing a steering group, you will get so far. What's absolutely critical, I'm used to my own pointer with a red thing on it. What's absolutely critical are these readiness factors. And I noticed some of these factors were similar to Adrian's presentation when he talked about his different lines at the end. That what's important is that actually we engage the leadership. That lean isn't something done by a department over there or IT or project management. That it's actually part of what we do every day. And these readiness factors are absolutely critical. But what will promote those readiness factors is developing a public service dominance logic. Is recognising we are a service-based organisation. And this, I'm going to jump right through this to really annoy you. This comes through the fact that what we need to recognise is we need to recognise we're a service star. And we need to recognise we're a service. What makes a service a service? It was a slide before, I went to it too quickly, but I'm going to ask you, see how quickly. What makes a service a service? Customer needs, absolutely. What differentiates it from a manufactured good, fundamentally? What, if we've got a manufactured good versus a service? Tangible. Tangibility. So, a manufactured good is tangible, a service isn't. What can we not do to a service then that we can do to a manufactured good? Can't touch it. What else can't we do? We can't store it. Yet we try to store it by creating waiting lists and queues. And actually, in terms of a service, when does consumption happen? When does consumption happen in a service as opposed to a manufactured good? Absolutely. Point of production is the point of consumption. So co-production is absolutely automatic. So in a manufactured good, we can store something. In a service environment, we cannot store it. And therefore, production and consumption happen simultaneously. And to give you a really start example, which might wake you up for the last few minutes of my talk, is if I was selling you a if I was making you a washing machine, with all the specification, I was making that washing machine in my underwear, would it make any difference to the durability and the working ability, that's a real word, of the washing machine? No. Try not to think about the next one too much. If I sold you the washing machine in my underwear, don't think too long, would it make a difference to the service experience? Yes. Now that's a good example of how production and consumption happen simultaneously. Not quite, but be careful. So what's important is we recognise we are a service-based industry. So every touch point we have with our students, with our other departments, with any of our clients, so to speak, that touch point is a service interaction. It's a service experience. And we need to recognise we can't store things. We're expected to deliver that service. And I mean that at your department level and at institutional level. So I've just come out with a paper, a 4-star paper. I say this with tongue in cheek because I can't believe a star like this that spells out the word service has got into a 4-star paper. But hey-ho, I'm not going to complain. I'm already on my way to the next rep. So in terms of the service star, which is really quite powerful, we're talking about this as what do you need to create a sustainable service model for public services. We need to think about the system. And nobody understands that better than this audience. Trying to make fixes in small chunks is no good. We have to understand the interrelationship, not just in the IT system, but between, say, the student, the department, the IT, the central organisation. We need to recognise they need to work all together to produce a sustainable model. And there's no point having the greatest IT system. We're talking we've talked about the possibility of the London campus being an Apple campus. Yet, can we sustain that? Can we support that? So what's important is we think about sustainability not just in the parts, but as a whole. We need to think about relationships. We need to think about marketing. Thinking about managing people's expectations. If you're running help desks, if you're running projects, if you're running programs, managing those expectations so people know when you're going to deliver it and how you're going to deliver it is really, really important. We need to recognise value is not what we perceive to be the value, but what our customer, our students, our clients perceive as a value. Value needs to be outside in, not inside out. And that's really important. We need to understand what risk we're taking and innovation. 3 months before, and this is Chatham House, 3 months before we're about to launch the concept of the London campus, I've now got registry saying to me, do you really want to do all these different types of ideas? And it's about being risky to create innovation that's really important. I'm going to get to the end because I've got so many people walking out now, I'm starting to get slightly paranoid. So co-production is really important in this. Co-production is not just an add-on. It's not just something extra we do. In other words, saying to somebody, did you actually how was that service? How was it for you? True co-production is getting people at the heart of what we're trying to create. And we know all the logic, and we know all the rhetoric, I can't say the word, that's just gone completely out of my head. That's it, thank you. Put my teeth back in. Behind that, but the reality is we really do need to do co-production. It's so, so important. We need to use the knowledge and the mind. We might think that we are technical experts, but using the behavioural experts or the sticky knowledge, the things that people understand, is really, really important. So it's the technical and the behavioural, the sticky knowledge, which is absolutely critical in delivering a sustainable service. So what this is about, what I've tried to convey to you in this really short time I've been with you, is the fact that lean has its place. Business process re-engineering has its place. All of those process improvement methodologies have their place. They are a brilliant way to start different conversations and dialogue across our universities. But my challenge to you is to get people to start thinking every day, where are my bicycle books? Thinking within in your own departments, your own areas, where are the bicycle books? And fundamentally getting people to say, because what we're about is we're about delivering a service. And creating and moving to placing the user at the heart of what we do to create effective systems and services, I believe has to be the way forward for higher education. So in other words, it's higher education, Jim, but not as we know it. Thank you very much indeed.